I remember the engine coughing. I remember a paddle flying past my head. I remember Victoria's fingers locking around my sleeve so hard that I felt every one of them. Then the railing disappeared under me. The water hit like a wall. For a few seconds, I had no idea which way was up. My jacket pulled tight across my shoulders. My shoes felt like weights, and all I could hear was the deep rush of water around my ears. When I finally broke the surface, I dragged in air and got a mouthful of salt. The boat was already 20 or 30 yards away, barely visible through the rain. Its rear end sat low, and the driver was shouting, but the wind tore his voice apart. Then I heard Victoria. "Ryan!" I turned and saw her between two waves. She was trying to lift herself out of the water instead of moving with it. Her arms kept slapping at the surface, and every time her face went under, she came back more scared. There was a life ring drifting near me, still attached to a short section of rope. I caught it, shoved one arm through, and kicked toward her. "Victoria, stop fighting it!" She didn't hear me. I got closer, reached out, and caught the back of her jacket. She twisted toward me so fast she almost pushed us both under. "Don't look at the water," I said. "Look at me." Her eyes found mine. "Ryan, look at me. Keep your hands on the ring." She grabbed it. "That's it. Breathe when I tell you." I had no idea where those words came from. In the office, I sometimes waited 10 minutes outside her door just to ask about a client transfer. Out there, I was giving her orders, and she was following everyone. I looked past her and saw a dark strip through the rain. At first, I thought it was another wave. Then, I caught the shape of rocks and bent trees. "Land," I said. "We're going there." She turned her head. "I can't." "You can. Hold the ring." The swim felt endless. Every few yards, a wave pushed us sideways. My legs started burning, and Victoria's jacket kept dragging. Once, she lost her grip and caught my shoulder instead. I pulled her hand back to the ring. "Stay with me." "I'm trying." "I know." That was all I had for her. No big promise, no speech, just the next kick, the next breath, the next few feet. When my knee finally hit rock, I almost cried from relief. I crawled forward, pulled the ring with me, and helped Victoria over the loose stones. She made it 3 steps before dropping to her knees. For a while, neither of us spoke. Rain hammered the beach. Water ran down my face. Victoria sat with both arms wrapped around herself, shaking so hard her teeth clicked. I checked her quickly. No obvious major injury. A scrape on one palm. A torn sleeve. She could move both legs. "You hit your head?" "No." "Any sharp pain?" She looked at me like she didn't understand the question. "Victoria." "No, I don't think so." "Stay here." I started searching the edge of the beach. Pieces from the boat had washed in among the seaweed. A torn seat cushion. One paddle, a length of yellow rope. Then I saw a red dry bag jammed between 2 rocks. Inside were 2 bottles of water, a small first aid pouch, a flashlight, and a packet of soft biscuits sealed in plastic. No radio, no working phone, no flare. I searched farther down and found nothing except broken branches and more rocks. When I came back, Victoria had stood up, but she looked unsteady. "Where are the others?" she asked. "I don't know." "Did they see us fall?" "I don't know." "They'll come back." "Maybe." Her face changed. "Maybe." I set the bag down. The boat was drifting. The weather is bad. They may not know exactly where we went into the water. She started pacing over the stones. "We have tracking equipment. We have emergency procedures. The driver has a radio. Assuming the radio still works." She stopped. I knew that sounded cold, but I also knew what she was doing. She was trying to build an office around herself. Procedures, equipment, people who could be called. None of it was on that beach. "Right now, we act like this is real," I said. She stared at me, The rain had flattened her hair against her face. Her expensive jacket was torn at the elbow. She looked nothing like the woman who could silence a conference room by setting down a pen. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means we move higher. We get out of the wind. We save the water. We check what we have, and we don't assume anyone reaches us before dark." For a second, I thought she might argue. Instead, she nodded. We carried the dry bag, rope, paddle, and cushion toward a line of bent trees above the beach. The ground there was still wet, but it was better than the open shore. I stretched the rope between two trunks and leaned broken branches against it. The torn cushion went under the driest section. It was barely a shelter, but it blocked some of the rain. Victoria watched me tie the rope. I should be helping. "Hold that branch." She did. When we finished, she sat beneath it and rubbed both hands over her face. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what?" "For being useless." I looked at her. "You're not useless. You're in shock." She lowered her hands. In the office, Victoria always knew what happened next. People waited for her decisions. People changed plans when she entered a room. Now she sat under a crooked frame of branches, soaked through, waiting for me to tell her what to do next. By morning, the rain had stopped. That should have felt like good news, but it didn't. The island looked almost calm in the early light. Pale rocks, low trees twisted by wind, a narrow strip of beach shining with water. From a distance, it probably looked beautiful. Standing on it, with wet clothes stuck to my skin and half a bottle of water left between us, it felt wrong. I woke before Victoria and climbed out from under the branches. Everything hurt. My shoulders, my legs, the side of my ribs where I must have hit the railing or a rock. I moved slowly down toward the shore and checked both directions. No boat, no smoke, nothing moving except gulls and water. I walked the length of the beach, looking for anything useful. The tide had dropped and left a new line of seaweed, wood, plastic, and pieces I couldn't identify. When I came back, Victoria was sitting up under the shelter. She looked at the empty space where I had been, then at me. "You didn't leave." "I was checking the shore." "I know. I just woke up and—" She stopped. I handed her one of the water bottles. "Small sip." She took one, then passed it back without arguing. That was new. At work, Victoria questioned everything. Times, costs, routes, vendor promises. On the island, she watched how much I drank and matched it exactly. I opened the packet of biscuits. There were 6, soft from moisture even through the wrapping. I gave her 3. "You should take more," she said. "Why?" "You did most of the work. We both need energy." She looked like she wanted to push back, but she ate one slowly. After that, we searched the beach together. We found more rope tangled around a broken crate, several pieces of driftwood, and a cracked plastic box with no lid. Farther down, Victoria saw something blue caught under seagrass. It was a torn waterproof root tag from the company boat. She wiped sand from it. "This came from the rear storage rack." "Then more things could wash in." She turned toward the water. "Or the boat could be close." "Maybe." She heard the caution in my voice, but didn't call me on it. A few minutes later, she found her bag. Or what was left of it. The strap was gone. One side was ripped open, and almost everything inside had disappeared. She pulled out a compact mirror, a wet key card, and one shoe. She stared at the shoe. "I paid too much for these." I laughed before I could stop myself. She looked at me. Then, somehow, she laughed too. It was quick and tired, but it changed the air between us. We kept moving. Near the far end of the beach, I found a sheet of clear plastic tangled around reeds. It had several holes, but most of it was still usable. By midday, I had a plan. We moved the shelter farther under the trees, where the ground rose slightly. I tied rope between two trunks, leaned driftwood against it, and stretched the plastic over the top. The emergency blanket from the first aid pouch was torn, but I used it along one side to block wind and reflect heat away from us. Victoria held branches in place while I tied them. "Have you done this before?" she asked. "Not exactly." "You look like you have." My uncle used to take me fishing when I was a kid. He believed every trip should include at least one bad decision. That sounds responsible. He taught me not to waste anything outdoors. She tightened a knot the way I showed her. "Your uncle would have hated me." I looked over. "Why?" "I complained about the rain yesterday." "You had just been thrown into the ocean?" "I still complained." "He would have respected you for still being here." Her hands stopped. For a second, she looked away. Then she pulled the rope tighter and said, "This knot is terrible." "It is. You could have lied. I'm trying to keep the roof up." By afternoon, the sun became a problem. The wet cold was gone, replaced by heat coming off the rocks. We stayed under the shelter when we could, and moved only for a reason. Victoria sorted what we had into neat groups: water, food, first aid, signal items, tools. Of course she did. Even stranded, she created a system. I used the cracked plastic box and part of the sheeting to make a shallow catch for rainwater. There were still dark clouds beyond the horizon, and I wanted it ready. Then we cleared a section of beach for a signal. Big pieces of driftwood went into a rough pile. Damp leaves stayed nearby for smoke. Victoria placed bright pieces of plastic around it so they would show from the water. When we finally sat down, the silence felt larger than before. She broke it first. "Do you want to stay in support?" I turned toward her. "What?" "At Astor Bay. Is that what you want?" "No." The answer came out faster than I expected. "What do you want?" "Operations." She waited. I rubbed sand from my palms. "Routing. Field coordination. Fixing problems before they reach clients. Real responsibility. Not just forwarding angry messages to people with better titles." "You already do half of that." "Not officially." "No, not officially." I looked at her. "You knew?" "Ryan, you notice broken plans before managers notice there is a plan." "That sounds almost like a compliment." "It was." I smiled. She didn't, but her eyes softened. "I thought you barely knew my name before yesterday," I said. "I know everyone's name." "That is not the same thing." "No." She looked toward the beach. "I notice everything. I just don't always show it." Then she added quieter, "I noticed you too." I didn't know what to say to that. The woman sitting beside me still had the same voice she used in meetings, but without the distance. There was no desk between us, no glass office, no calendar full of people waiting for her. Just heat, salt, and 2 water bottles. She picked up a small stone and rolled it between her fingers. "At work, I can solve almost anything," she said. "A missed transfer, a furious client, a permit issue. I make calls, move money, change people. And here? Here, none of it matters." She looked at her hands. "I built my whole life around staying in control. It disappeared in 30 seconds. You're still here. That doesn't feel like control." "No, but it counts." She was quiet after that. By sunset, we had a rhythm. I checked the shore. Victoria counted supplies. I prepared the signal pile. She gathered dry material from beneath the trees. When we sat under the shelter, she didn't leave the careful space between us that she had the night before. Our shoulders almost touched. The water in front of us turned dark as the light dropped. Victoria stared at it for a long time. Then she said, "This is going to sound strange." "Probably." She glanced at me. "I feel safer with you on this island than I usually feel in my own office." I looked at her, waiting for the joke. There wasn't one. And for the first time since we reached the beach, I understood that she wasn't only trusting me to keep us alive. She was letting me see the person she usually kept hidden. The second day was harder because hope had started to feel like work. In the morning, I still expected to see a boat every time I looked up. By noon, I had stopped expecting it and started checking anyway. Victoria noticed. "You've looked at the water 6 times in 10 minutes. I'm checking. For what? Anything. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have." She didn't push after that. We spent most of the morning improving the signal area. I dragged larger stones across the beach while Victoria arranged them into 4 huge letters. Help. The rocks were uneven, and the last letter leaned badly to one side, but from the water it should have been clear. We rebuilt the fire pile higher, with dry branches underneath and damp leaves ready to make thick smoke. I kept the flashlight beside it in case we heard an engine after dark. Victoria tied the blue root tag to the longest branch we could lift and fixed it high above the shelter. "It looks pathetic," she said. "It moves in the wind." "So does my sleeve." "Your sleeve doesn't have the company logo." She looked down at the torn fabric hanging from her elbow. "Not anymore." The compact mirror worked better than I expected. When the sun broke through, I showed her how to aim the light by holding 2 fingers in front of the target and moving the reflection between them. She tried it toward the horizon. A bright flash jumped across the water. "You're good at that," I said. "I have spent years directing attention exactly where I want it." "That sounds more like you." She smiled, but only for a second. The root tag kept bothering me. I carried it down to the wet sand and studied the printed numbers again. It had been fixed to the rear equipment rack, which meant it had probably broken loose after the boat struck something. The tide had brought it to us from the north side. Our planned route should have passed south of the island. Victoria crouched beside me. "What is it?" "I think we drifted farther than we realized." "How far?" "I don't know." "Ryan." The wind pushed the boat north before we went over. Then the current pushed us again while we were swimming. She followed the line of the beach with her eyes. "So the search area could be wrong." "At first." Her face tightened. "At first?" "They'll expand it." "You don't know that." "No." She stood and walked away from me. I let her. There was no useful way to soften it. People would search the last confirmed route, then the position of the damaged boat, then the water between. If the driver had lost sight of us quickly, nobody could know which direction we had gone. That didn't mean they weren't looking. It only meant they might be looking at empty water. By late afternoon, the heat had taken most of our energy. We stayed beneath the plastic and spoke less. Victoria rested with her head against one of the branches while I counted what remained. Less than 1 full bottle of water, 2 biscuits, the flashlight, the first aid pouch, the mirror, the paddle, a few lengths of rope. Clouds were building again, which could mean rainwater, but it could also mean another rough night. We heard an engine shortly before sunset. Both of us moved at once. I ran down the beach, grabbed the mirror, and sent flashes toward the sound. Victoria reached the signal pile and tried to start the fire. The engine grew louder, then softer. I climbed onto a rock, waving both arms. "Here!" Victoria shouted too. We listened until the sound faded completely. She stayed beside the smoking pile, one hand still holding a branch. "Maybe they saw." "Maybe." "You keep saying that." "Because I don't know." She threw the branch down. "I know you don't know." Her voice cracked on the last word. That night, the rain came lightly. Not enough to fill the plastic catch, but enough to make the shelter cold and sticky. We sat close under the emergency blanket, knees pulled up, listening to drops tap against the plastic. Victoria didn't sleep. I knew, because every time I moved, she looked toward me. After a long silence, she said, "What if they stopped looking?" I stared into the dark. "They won't stop tonight." "That is not comforting." "It's the truth we can use." She gave a small, tired laugh. "You always do that." "Do what?" "Give me one piece at a time. It's easier to carry." She turned toward the water again. I don't know how to do this. Sit here? Wait, need someone. Have no way to fix anything. Her voice was low, but once she started, she couldn't seem to stop. I hate needing you this much. I looked at her. You don't owe me for it. That's not what I mean. Then what do you mean? She pressed both hands over her face. I don't know who I am here. You're Victoria. That answer would irritate me anywhere else. Good thing we're here. She lowered her hands, and I saw tears on her cheeks. I moved closer without asking and put one arm around her. At first, she stayed stiff. Then, she leaned into me so quickly it felt like she had been holding herself upright all day just to avoid doing it. I didn't tell her everything would be fine. I didn't promise a boat would come in the morning. I just held her while the rain tapped above us. After a while, she said, Most people around me want something. I work for you. I definitely want better scheduling software. She laughed against my shoulder. Then she became serious again. They either try to impress me or wait for me to fail. What am I doing? She lifted her head. Taking care of me. The space between us changed. I felt it before either of us moved. She looked at my mouth, then back at my eyes. We may regret this. Maybe. That's all you have? I'd rather be honest than pretend I don't feel it. Victoria kissed me first. There was nothing careful about it at the beginning. 2 days of fear, heat, salt, and things neither of us had said came out all at once. Then she slowed down. Her forehead rested against mine. This is a terrible place for this. Most of this place is terrible. She kissed me again, softer. Later, we lay beneath the emergency blanket with her back against my chest. The shelter creaked in the wind, and the water beyond the rocks was completely dark. I should have been thinking about rescue. Instead, I kept thinking about the office, her glass door, her calm voice, the distance she wore like part of her clothes. There was no way to return to that and act like this had been nothing. But as I watched the dark water, I understood something else too. Rescue would bring back every title, every rule, and every reason we had never crossed this line before. Write in the comments, would you trust feelings born during a life or death crisis? Or would you wait until normal life returned before believing they were real? It would save us from the island, and it might take away the only place where we had told each other the truth. The search boat appeared the next afternoon. At first, it was only a white shape moving against the horizon. I stared at it so long that Victoria finally asked what I was looking at. I pointed. She stood so fast she hit her shoulder against the shelter frame. Is that? I think so. We ran. I grabbed the compact mirror and climbed onto the highest rock I could reach. Victoria pulled the route tag from the branch and waved it over her head. The boat kept moving past us. Come on, I said under my breath. I angled the mirror toward the cabin and sent flash after flash across the water. Victoria shouted until her voice cracked. I jumped down, ran along the beach, and waved both arms. For several seconds, nothing changed. Then the boat turned. Victoria caught my hand. Her fingers locked around mine, just like they had on the deck before we went into the water. But this time, she wasn't pulling me toward panic. She was standing beside me, breathing hard, watching the bow come closer. They see us, she said. Yeah, they actually see us. A smaller rescue craft came in near the rocks. 2 people stepped into the shallow water and called for us to stay where we were. Victoria squeezed my hand once. Then, she let go. It was a small thing, but I felt it immediately. The normal world was already coming back. On the mainland, everything became official. Medical checks, warm clothes, questions from local authorities, questions from company leadership, questions about the boat, the route, the weather, the driver, the equipment, and the exact moment we went over the railing. People kept calling us lucky. Victoria answered calmly. She sat straight in a borrowed jacket and gave clear times, clear details, and clear corrections whenever someone misunderstood her. By the time senior management arrived, the woman from the island was gone. The office version had returned. I knew it was unfair to think that way. She had spent 2 days holding herself together with almost no water and no idea whether anyone would find us. Of course, she would grab the first piece of control available. Still, when she looked at me across the room, her face gave nothing away. Someone from the company drove me home. Victoria left with the chief executive and the safety team. She didn't call that night. She didn't call the next day either. When I returned to work, people treated me differently. Some wanted every detail. Others slapped my shoulder like I had won something. A manager who had ignored 3 of my emails the week before asked whether I needed anything. Victoria stayed in her office. Her door was open, but every time I passed, she was in a meeting. For 2 days, she said nothing personal. I told myself the island had been real. I also told myself real did not mean permanent. On the 3rd morning, Human Resources asked me to come upstairs. I expected a formal thank you and maybe an extra week off. Instead, the operations director pushed a folder across the table. "We would like to move you into operations coordination." I looked at him. He continued. "Higher pay, expanded responsibility, direct work with field vendors, route planning and incident response. You would report to me." I opened the folder. The salary was better than I expected. The role was the kind of work I had wanted for 2 years. "Why now?" I asked. He leaned back. "Because you are underused." "That's not new." "No." I waited. He tapped the folder. Victoria made the recommendation. For a second, all I could think about was the shelter, the compact mirror, and her face in the dark when she said she hated needing me. I should have felt proud. Instead, I wondered whether this was a clean way to move me away from her. Recognition, guilt, distance, maybe all 3. I accepted anyway. The work started quickly. Victoria brought me into planning meetings I had never been invited to before. She asked for my opinion in front of senior staff. When I pointed out weak routes or unrealistic timing, she listened. She was professional. Too professional. She never mentioned the island. After one afternoon meeting, everyone began gathering their laptops and coffee cups. I stood too, but Victoria looked at me. "Ryan, stay." The room emptied. She waited until the door closed. "You've been avoiding me," she said. I almost laughed. "I thought you were avoiding me. I was giving you room. You acted like nothing happened." Her expression shifted. "In public. That felt like everywhere." She looked down at the table, then back at me. "The promotion is not payment." I didn't say it was. "You thought it." I stayed quiet. She walked around the table. "I had already discussed moving you before the accident. Not formally, but I had raised it. You were doing coordination work without the title or the pay." "Then why didn't anything happen?" "Because I kept letting other things take priority." She said it without defending herself. "The island did not make you capable, Ryan. It made it impossible for me to keep ignoring what I already knew." That landed harder than I expected. "And us?" I asked. Her eyes held mine. "I cannot be careless with you at work." "So we pretend?" "No." She took a breath. "You now report to another director. The promotion is documented. The salary was approved without my involvement. Your performance record supports the move. You arranged all of that?" I made sure it was handled correctly. I stepped closer. "What happens now?" "We stopped pretending the island stayed on the island." She paused. "I'm not trying to hide what happened. I'm trying to make sure it can survive real life." A few weeks later, after the reporting change was official, we met after work on the marina pier. No rain, no shouting, no emergency blanket. Just evening light on the water and company boats tied in neat rows. Victoria stopped near the end of the pier. "I still hate boats," she said. "I know." She looked at one, then at me. "I came anyway." "Why?" "Because I'm tired of letting fear decide what gets to stay in my life." Then she took my hand first. The island had not created anything between us. It had only stripped away the titles, the distance, and every excuse we had used to act like there was nothing there.